No, 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 no. Nope, nope, nope. Can you guys do me a favor? I don't know what got said, but we're going to ignore that. Can you guys do me a favor and stand up? If you have a phone, you can go ahead and put it down. You can sit your stuff down. I want to ask you guys to read through. You guys just saw it on the screen, but we're going to read it again. Psalm chapter 23, starting in verse 1. You guys are going to read with me. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You guys can go ahead and have a seat. Thanks so much for doing that. I wasn't quite sure how that was going to go, but what I wanted to start by doing that so that we set a precedence here, that we care for, we love, and we respect the Word of God. And so I want to start after that by telling you guys a story about a couple named Mike and Amy. None of you know Mike and Amy because they are made up. So in this made up story, Mike and Amy are married. They've been married for a few years now. And they decided that since they had been married for a few years, they wanted to go on a vacation. And so they begin to plan this vacation. And as they're starting to tell their friends and family where they're thinking about going, they hear over and over again from multiple friends and families that you have to do a helicopter tour. I don't know if any of you guys, have any of you have ever done a helicopter tour? Okay, I want to do one, but Mike and Amy wanted to do one too. And so all these friends and family, they're telling them, hey, you have to try this helicopter tour. And so they get online and they check out the location that they're going, and they do what any of us would naturally do. They book the cheapest and the easiest available helicopter tour. And so they book it. It's a couple weeks out from their vacation. And so they finally get to where they are going. They land night one, and then they wake up the next morning excited for this helicopter tour. And so they go up to the front desk of the place that does these tours, and they see this captain who's going to fly them on their helicopter tour. And he kind of gives them a side eye. He doesn't really care that they are there, and they let them know, hey, we have a reservation. Hey, we're supposed to go on this helicopter tour. And so the pilot says, well, I guess I'll take you on the helicopter, as if they didn't book the helicopter tour and they were already ready to go. So they get on the helicopter, and the pilot doesn't ask their names. He doesn't care to know what they're there in town for. He doesn't care about any of that. He barely makes sure that they're buckled. Mike has to make sure that Amy's seatbelt is good. And so they get on, and sure enough, they go the fastest possible helicopter tour they've ever been on. This is the first one, so it's the only one, but it seems relatively fast for a helicopter tour, because they notice that as soon as they get back to the place that they took this tour, that there's another couple ready to go, because all this pilot really cares about is getting the next one on, getting more money, and getting them out the door. And so they have a decent time, I guess, whatever. They go to dinner that night at their resort, and they start talking with another couple of tourists. And they ask them about their helicopter tour that they told them they went on. And have you guys ever had one of those experiences where you didn't have a great time, but you don't want to tell somebody that you didn't have a great time? Have you guys ever been there? What's the face that you make? So I'm like, hey, how was that? This is really uncomfortable because none of you can see what each other look like, but you all look equally uncomfortable. So anyways, Mike and Amy clearly did not have the best time, but they were, being good spirits about it. And they hear from these other couple of tourists, hey, you got to try the helicopter tour that we went on. And they start to tell them about it, how great the pilot was, how awesome the scenery was. And Mike and Amy realized very quickly that they did not pay for quality when it comes to tours. And so they get excited, they get back to the hotel. Luckily enough, the other helicopter tour that these tourists had went on had a spot available. And so they get on, they go to meet the pilot. It's a completely different experience. The pilot gets them on. He has a great time. He even shows them spots during the tour that weren't on the original map. He gives them more than they even paid for. He got to know their names. He got to know them. And afterwards, he invited them back anytime they would have him. And so Mike and Amy learned a lesson that you and I learn in life. They learned it the hard way. And I think some of us maybe have too. And here's the lesson that Mike and Amy learned. Who we have leading us matters. Who we have leading us matters. So, if you guys don't know who I am, typically we start by introducing ourselves, but I wanted to get that out of the way first. My name is Larry and I'm on staff here. And tonight we're going to start a brand new series. Billy, keep it down. Billy was ready and Jax had to tame him. We're going to start a brand new series called Lessons from the Valley, where we're going to walk through one of the most well-known Psalms in Scripture. We just read it at the beginning of tonight, and it's Psalm 23. And we're going to walk through this verse by verse, starting tonight in just verse 1. This is the only verse that we're going to look at for most of the night, and so I know most of the time we have like 7 verses by the first point, just one tonight. I'm going to make it easy on you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Many of you may know this, but if you don't, this psalm was actually written by King David, who many of you may know. He's a very prominent figure in the Old Testament. David wrote this psalm, and many people believe that David actually wrote this psalm during one of the most trying seasons in his life. Not a season where he was eating grapes and sunbathing on the roof of his palace as king, but David actually more than likely wrote this psalm in a season where he was running and trying not to be killed. He was not having a good time, and yet he writes that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so as we go throughout tonight, I'm going to ask you to do something a little different. I've already asked you to do something different. Normally you don't stand and read through an entire chapter of the Bible, but I'm going to ask you to do another thing different. Because I can see that a lot of you have your notes out, a lot of you are taking notes on your phone, and I love that. It's one of the most encouraging things I think we see here, is you guys taking notes, filling up your journals, and then going to your small groups and sharing. But tonight, as you take notes, feel free to do that. But I want you to write down this question. I want you to write down, make a separate page for it, make a separate notes file. And this is the question that I want you to write down. Who is my shepherd? And we're going to come back to this question over and over again tonight. And here's why I want you to put it on a separate page or in a separate file on your phone. Because every single time we ask that question, I want you to write down the answer that applies to what we're talking about. I want you to write down and answer the question, who is my shepherd? You see, when David wrote this, David was qualified to write this because David actually, before he was king, was a shepherd. And now, you all know just as well as I do that we understand that which we are. Here's what I mean by that. Raise your hand if you have a job in the room. Adults too, it doesn't matter. Todd, what's your job? Did everybody hear that? Todd is a regional sales manager. Now, I could look up and I could read what it's like to be a regional sales manager, but Todd, do you think you could tell me what it's like to be a regional sales manager? Why is that? Because that's what he does. That's what he is. Keep your hands up. Raise your hand if you have a job. You guys thought I was just going to call on leaders. Ben, what's your job? He's a chef, guys. He cooks. Now, again, I could look up, I could read all about what it's like to be a chef, but Ben, do you think you could tell me what it's like to be a chef? Why is that? Because he does that. I love you, Ben. We understand that which we are. Each and every one of you are very different. You're into different things. You do different things. And you can tell me more than what I could read about it, more than what I could hear about it. You could tell me what it's like to do whatever it is you do. You can tell me because that is what you are. And so when we hear David say, the Lord is my shepherd, David knows what it's like to be a shepherd because David was a shepherd. And so this isn't something that David writes nonchalantly because he's like, oh man, this is going to sound so mystical. Being a shepherd is like everybody wants to be a shepherd. It's such a cool job. No, he writes that the Lord is his shepherd because he knows what it goes into, what it takes to be a shepherd, what goes into being one. And it was also a humbling thing for David to put himself in the position of a sheep. Why? Because David knows just how much sheep need. And I think we can take from David in understanding, and we're going to talk a lot about sheep tonight, so get ready because I'm going to throw a lot of sheep facts at you. But here's what we need to know as we read this verse, is that as the Lord is our shepherd, we are his sheep. We are the sheep in this situation. And so here's how tonight's going to go. We're going to go through 3 key responsibilities of a shepherd. Number 1, a shepherd is to direct. Shepherds are to direct. Now, I don't just mean in the way that someone directs a movie or a leader directs a group of people. I mean, like literally, shepherds were in charge of leading their sheep, of directing their sheep from point A to point B. They were, all in all, the GPS system for the sheep. Shepherds walk in a direction, sheep follow. Seems pretty simple. And now here's why this is such an important responsibility for shepherds, because I don't know if you guys know a lot about sheep. I didn't before the last couple of weeks, but here's what I come to find out. Sheep actually are terrible at giving themselves direction. Sheep are terrible because they can actually see, it's really cool. They can see in all sorts of different directions just by standing there. Like it's something with the way their eyes work. They can see all around them without moving. But here's the problem. While they can see all around them, sheep can only see that which is right in front of them. They have terrible depth perception. And so while they can walk in any direction, they can't see that which is not right in front of them. And so, without a shepherd to lead the way, these sheep get lost. I want to tell you guys about a time that I made a very poor decision in letting someone direct me. And Steph, I don't know if you'll remember this. It wasn't Steph. Steph wasn't the one who was bad at directing. She's a great director. But it was during quarantine, way back when. I know it feels like forever ago. And we were working here, and some of you guys know Christian Brinkley. He was the one who was just on stage leading us. He used to work on staff here. And in the middle of quarantine, we were all, we were crazy. We wanted to get out just like everybody else. And so one day we just decided, well, everywhere's closed, so let's just go on a ride. And so we all run downstairs, and we're excited to just get out of the office for a day because we hadn't been anywhere. And so we get downstairs and realize Christian's the only one who has his keys because Christian was the one who drove us around most of the time. And so we all pile in Christian's car, and it wasn't until we start to take off that we realize we have no idea where Christian is taking us. And so we get in his car and we're starting to drive, and these neighborhoods back here, before they were all super developed, Christian starts to drive around, and Steph lovingly can attest to this. Christian drives sometimes like a madman. Am I right? Yes. And so I'm in the front seat, Steph and Tucker are in the back seat, and Steph is getting thrown around, crashing into the window, crashing into Tucker. Meanwhile, Tucker's having like the time of his life. He feels like he's on a roller coaster. And we get to this point, and we realize that Christian had taken us down an undeveloped road, and we ended up in a mud pit. And now, thankfully, we didn't get stuck because while Christian sometimes drives like a madman, he has also quite literally saved my life at times. I will tell you all about it if you want to know. He's a great driver when he needs to be. But here's the point. We made a poor decision in who we let direct our life. And I want to ask you a question. Who is your shepherd? And I want you to answer that by way of who are you letting direct you? Who is it that is choosing and leading you in directions in life? Who is it that chooses where you end up? Is it yourself? Are you the shepherd in your life? Are you the one that gets to choose which direction you go and where you end up based on solely what your heart desires and where your heart desires to take you? Is it other people? Is it friends at school? Is it people that you probably shouldn't be around? Do you care so much about what they think that they are the ones that get to choose and direct where you end up? And I want to ask you, just like we ended up in a pit, do you find yourself regularly in pits with the people who are leading you? Do you find yourself in situations, in places where you probably shouldn't be and where you are uncomfortable as you continue to follow whoever it is you are making your shepherd? Who is it that is directing you? Second thing that a shepherd is responsible for. Second thing, shepherds are to set the pace. This is one that there are certain parts of messages, y'all, that are really convicting to write, and this one got me. And we'll get to why in just a second. But shepherds are to set the pace. Now, another fun fact about sheep. So they have horrible depth perception. They can't really see that well. Does anybody have any guesses at how fast a sheep can run? Just guess. 42, that's really fast. Not that fast. 20, okay, a little warmer. What'd you say? No. 25 miles an hour. Bingo. I don't know who said it. Somebody maybe said it. I don't know if any of you said it, actually. 25 miles an hour, which is a lot faster than I would have given sheep credit for being able to run. Sheep can run up to 25 miles an hour, but it's only recommended based on multiple sheep websites. I looked it up. I promise I'll show you my sources afterwards. I don't remember what it's called. While they can run up to 25 miles an hour, it's recommended that sheep only travel, get this, 3 to 4 miles in a day. They can only travel up to 3 to 4 miles a day, because if you've ever seen a sheep, they don't exactly look like LeBron James. They're not the most physically, they're not overpowering creatures, and so they have these very big bodies and these very little legs. And so if they are running 25 miles an hour for 3 to 4 miles, they become very fatigued, very fast, and they can collapse, and in some situations, even perish. 7 minutes and 12 seconds. I had to look up the math because I can't do the math. 7 minutes and 12 seconds. If a sheep runs at its maximum speed in the maximum amount of time that it's supposed to travel in a day, that's exactly how long it will take for a sheep to collapse. And so it might take a sheep 7 minutes and 12 seconds before they reach their limit. But I want to ask some of you in the room, how long has it taken you before you've reached your limit? How long does it take you to run at full speed, to run your maximum amount before you find yourself fatigued and collapsed? You see, you and I can move very quickly, and we can get a lot done in a short amount of time. Think about all of the things that you've accomplished today. Think about all of the accomplishments that you've had this past week, this past month, and how fast you have been going. And it's probably felt very good. You've probably gotten a lot done, but I think some of us in the room, if we took an honest look at ourselves and we stopped and reflected for just a second, we would realize that we are either at or long past our breaking point. Some of us in the room are exhausted because we have been running at full speed, and we have long since passed how far we are supposed to run. And here's the problem that I think some of us find ourselves in. You see, when we let the wrong shepherds set the pace in our life, we move quickly for a moment, but we can't keep up. And so, again, I ask you, who is your shepherd? And I want you to answer it by answering this question. Who is setting the pace in your life? Who is it that's determining how fast you run and for how long? Is it yourself? Are you setting expectations and a pace on your life that you can't even keep up with? And is it causing you to be worn down that at the end of every single day you find yourself collapsing because you have simply run too hard for too long? This is the part that I was talking about that is super convicting for me. Is it other people in your life? And here's what I mean by that. Are you allowing people around you to dictate the speed in which you move? I reflected back this past week when I was in high school. I found myself in this situation a lot. And here's how I found myself in this situation. I want you to think on if this is where you find yourself. See, I had a handful of friends in high school, and I remember having certain friends who were extremely gifted in the athletic space. Right? They were the top athletes. They worked hard all the time. They were in the gym 6 out of 7 days a week. They were going hard in that area of life. And I remember seeing them and thinking, man, I got to do that. I want to keep up with them. But what I didn't know was that these people who were physically gifted and giving their all to athletics were lacking in the emotional space in their life, and they were lacking in the educational and the academic. And so I see just their best, and I'm like, man, I have to keep up with the athletic. I have to keep up with the physical capacity of this person. And then I would have other people in my life who maybe weren't as capable and didn't have the capacity for athletics, but they were incredibly relational people. And they were getting coffee with multiple people in a week. They were inviting people over. They hung out with a ton of people. They never missed events. And I remember seeing them and thinking, man, I need to keep up with that. I need to be the one who's giving myself constantly to everyone, who's keeping up with everyone's emotional stamina. And again, I didn't realize that these people were lacking in other areas of their life. And then there are those people who were killing it in school, who were getting straight A's, who were crushing it, who were giving all of their time towards studying and academics. And I saw that and I was like, man, I need to keep up with them too. And so before I know it, I'm trying to keep up with the people who have the highest physical and athletic capacity, who have the highest emotional capacity, and who have the highest academic capacity. And I remember sitting across from a mentor when I was in high school and basically throwing myself down at a coffee table saying, man, I can't keep up. And I'll never forget him asking me, who is it that I'm trying to keep up with? And I think some of you in this room find yourself in that situation and you're worn out not because of a personal pace that you have set, but because you are trying to keep up with the best of those around you. Instead of walking at the pace that your shepherd sets for your life, you're allowing everyone else to be the shepherd who sets the pace. Is keeping up with the pace of everyone around you draining you? Because it sure drained me. So here's the last thing that we are going to talk about. Shepherds know their sheep. Shepherds know their sheep. And here's why this one is significant. Because as I read this one and as I started to look into this with sheep, this one seemed the most obscure to me. Because I'm like, look, Tucker's a great example. Actually, Steph's a great example. Steph, do you have a connection with your dog that you just got? Steph just got a dog, y'all. Yes. I don't understand it. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I don't have a pet of my own. I do not understand the connection between humans and animals. I see it all the time, but I just don't get it. And so with dogs, it's a little more understandable because they're super cute, and I have dogs in my life that I love, but I don't have a connection like some people do. But then I look at sheep. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a picture of a sheep. If you have no idea what I've been talking about this whole time, I should have got a picture up on the screen. They're not that cute. They're just not, okay? They're not super cute animals. They're just not. Okay, anyways. But here's why this is such a significant responsibility of a shepherd. Because two things that a shepherd is to do when they get to know their sheep. Number one, they give them names. And sheep learn the names that the shepherd gives them. How? By hearing it repeated over and over and over again. So that way, when the shepherd calls them by name, they can come to them. The other reason that they do this, the other reason that they continuously repeat these sheep's name, is so that they can come, but also so that they can learn to recognize the shepherd's voice. And what happens if a shepherd doesn't give a sheep a name? If a shepherd doesn't know their sheep well enough to give it a name and to help it recognize the shepherd's voice, then the sheep will respond to anyone's call. And so you see very quickly how this can become a dangerous thing if they start to hear sounds as the sheep are moving. If other thieves come in and try to steal these sheep, they recognize anybody's voice as the voice of their shepherd. I think some of us in here respond to any call that we hear from the world, any sound that we hear that sounds interesting, and anything that we are invited into, we automatically assume is good for us because we have never learned to recognize the voice of our shepherd and learn the name that he has given us. You see, you have never learned to recognize the shepherd's voice. You've never learned the name that he gave for you. And so you go and you follow any call that the world gives you because you don't know your name and you don't recognize the shepherd's voice. Another part of shepherds knowing their sheep deeply is this thing called shearing. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. Again, not a sheep owner, not a shepherd, so I didn't know much about it. I just thought it was a haircut, if I'm being honest. If you've ever seen it, it's these sheep, when these sheep get haircuts, right? When they get all of their wool shaved off of them. And it's actually a very important thing that happens. And there's a couple of reasons that they get their their wool shaved off, they're sheared off. Number one, it's so that they don't get too hot in the warmer months, because again, very small animals can move very fast. If it's very hot and they're basically wearing a Sherpa all the time, they're going to get worn out and they're going to get too hot and fatigued. It's so that parasites or little bugs don't get caught in their skin, don't get caught in the wool, and so they have to get rid of some of it. They have to do it about once a year so that these parasites don't get caught, and it's also so that they don't get stuck and caught on the trees around them or fall and get stuck. However, there are times in which letting a sheep grow out their wool is very important. As you can imagine, do we wear jackets in the summertime? Most of us don't. Some of you are psychos and you wear jackets all year round, even if it's 90 degrees outside. But most of us, when it's hot outside, we don't. And so we want to wear a jacket. These sheep want to have their wool when it's cool outside. But also, it's so that they can give it away and be a resource for people around them. But here's the point. If they are sheared too often or at the wrong times, they will not survive and they won't have any resources to give. And here's how this applies to you and I. I think some of us have allowed the wrong shepherds who do not care about us to make calls on what we need to remove from our lives and when. We let friends who do not follow Jesus, who do not know him, let us miss church. We let them influence us and say, hey, I know that you're struggling with this. I know that the church thinks it's a sin, but you don't really need to tell anybody. It's really not that bad. Just keep it between us. And we hear that because, again, we haven't learned to recognize the voice of our shepherd, of the good shepherd. And so we say, okay, that makes sense. I'm just going to listen to you. Or we let them remove things from our lives that we actually need. And it works the other way too. We let them keep things, or we let them remove things that should protect us. We let them remove things out of our life that should protect us. And so again, and for the last time tonight, I want to ask you, who is your shepherd? Whose call are you responding to, and who determines what to remove in your life? Who knows you deeply? Whose call are you responding to? And as we think about all of these questions, I want you for just a moment to look at the list that you have been writing tonight and to look at all of the answers that you have for who is your shepherd. And I want you to raise your hand if you wrote anybody's name or anything down other than just Jesus. I wasn't writing during the message, but I probably could have written a long list too, because there are plenty of things, plenty of people in my life who I have allowed to be shepherds when they should never have been close to me. So we want to ask ourselves a question then. Most weeks before we come out here and preach, before we come out here and open up God's Word, there's a room back here. And most of the time I try to get in there and pray before I come out here just to clear my mind, to help the Lord focus me. And I was doing that like normal tonight, just praying that the Lord would speak through his word, that he would encourage you all, that he would challenge and convict you. But all the while in doing that, there was a picture that I couldn't shake. And it's this picture of a flock of sheep moving from point A to point B on a mountainside and seeing sheep go away. Seeing a sheep walk away. And again, I'm not the type of guy to get attached to animals, to get emotional thinking about them. But the reason I think this got me is because I think that's where a lot of you find yourself. I think there are a handful of you in the room who have gone away and are in seasons, maybe you're in a season of life where you don't have a shepherd, where you're away from your people, and where you have allowed the world around you to become your shepherd. And so I want to ask you a different question as we close tonight. And that question is this: who is the good shepherd? Who is the good shepherd? I want to read another passage of scripture as we close out tonight. And it's John chapter 10, starting in verse 10. Jesus says this. He says, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I have come so that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees wolves coming, leaves the sheep, and he flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. And he flees, the hired hand, because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep." But Jesus says, again, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me." Christ says it very plainly in this passage that he is the good shepherd. And so I want to encourage you. Stop following shepherds that do not care about you. Stop following friends. Stop following people in your life who do not care about you. Stop following a world that does not care about the direction that you go or where you end up. Stop letting the world set the pace in your life that you cannot keep up with. Stop letting the world shepherd you when it does not know you at all. You see, the world does not care about the things in your life that are threatening you. It doesn't know you deeply. It can't direct you. But Jesus can. Jesus is the good shepherd, and I want to ask you one final question, and that is he your shepherd? Is he your shepherd? See, Jesus wants to lead you to life and life in abundance. He wants to set a pace on your life that you can keep up with. He tells us in Matthew chapter 11 that his yoke is easy and his burden is so light for those who need rest and are willing to come to him. Jesus knows everything about you. He knows every mistake that you have made. He knows every sin that you have committed or will commit. Jesus cares deeply about you, and he desires to get rid of everything in your life that seeks to steal, seeks to kill, and seeks to destroy you. And so again, I ask, is Jesus your shepherd? Jesus keeps going in John chapter 10, verse 14. He says, "I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father." What Jesus is talking about in this passage is the fact that he eventually would go to the cross, knowing all of the sheep that are of his fold and were not yet, knowing all of the sins that they would commit, knowing all of the mistakes that they have made. He would go to the cross on his Father's behalf and die for us. Lay down his life, unlike the hired hand, unlike the people that we let in our life shepherd us, who when the going gets tough and when we get into seasons of suffering and trials do not care about us, and they leave us to fend for ourselves against the wolves. Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus, knowing all about us, desiring to shepherd us, goes to the cross, and he dies for us. He then raises from the grave on his own behalf, defeating sin, defeating our death, not so that we can continue to walk under the care of shepherds who, again, do not care about you, but so that we can believe in him and we can submit to him as Lord over every area of our life, and so that we can receive that which we could never find on our own, which is eternal life. And so again, I ask you to think about this question. Knowing that Jesus is the good shepherd, is he your shepherd? Because you see, when we know who the good shepherd is, and when we know what he has done for us, we cannot help but follow him. And so consider tonight who Jesus is. He's the good shepherd, and consider what he has done for you in dying on the cross. And I ask you to consider following the good shepherd. I want to pray for you guys, and I want to ask you to do this. If during the next song that we're going to sing in a second, if at any point during that song you feel as though you have not been following Jesus, I just want to invite you. I'll be in here. Your small group leaders are going to be in here. I just want to invite you to pull us into the hallway and have a conversation. Just talk to us. Ask the questions that you need to ask. I want to ask you to do that. Be bold in that. And don't let tonight just pass you by. But consider who you have let be shepherd over your life. And consider how much better it is to let Jesus be your shepherd. Let me pray for you all.